All right, next question we have is from Imagikey. It's not really a question. It's more of just 3 words. It says best shading inks.
I think we could probably deduce what this person is looking for.
What are the best shading inks, maybe? Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Well, I'll give my few and then turn it over to Brian, who kind of has some old and some new thoughts on this one. This is probably going to be repeated by Brian, but Noodler's Golden Brown. I've been writing with that a lot in 2021. And that has been, like Brian mentioned in an earlier question, giving myself a project to do more writing. I've been trying to transcribe recipes into a cookbook, and Noodler's Golden Brown has been one of my go-to inks for that. Beautiful, beautiful shading, especially with a big nib. Been loving that one. And then, obviously, in addition to a lot of Sailor's inks, I have to mention Sailor 120, 123 and 224. These have been more favorites of 2021 for me. We have colloquially known as Rain Fluff and Thunder Fluff. And by that, I mean that's what I call them. But I use them a lot, and I love them. They have tremendously delightful shading, very light, but still look really great. Again, bigger nibs are better. That's kind of the case with anything shading. If you really want to see some shading, put down more ink. Because you'll have more pooling that way. Mm-hmm. And then a surprise addition to, again, this is another one I've discovered this year. When Private Reserve came back, I wrote with Private Reserve Blue Suede. And with a glass pen specifically, I remember that one had really impressive shading. So impressive that I went and actually inked up a pen with it and started using that. I've been really happy with PR Blue Suede. And all of these are actually kind of new additions. So these are probably not my all-time favorite shaders, but more or less my 2021 shaders. And then Robert Oster Violet Dreams and Robert Oster Summer Storm. I have a really hard time choosing between these two, but I kind of just stumbled upon them this year, and I was blown away at how gorgeous they look. I think that once I started writing with some of these Sailor shaders, I kind of fell in love with this gray-purple color, and I've been writing with this shade in a number of different brands, and these two from Robert Oster are, again, just beautiful shaders. This sort of shade really does shade well, and again, wider nibs are great. Specifically, if you want something that shades, I think just about any light blue with a broad nib is going to shade pretty well for you. Like, there are a lot of different inks in that color category that provide tremendously beautiful shading.
Yeah. I would say a lot of turquoises too tend to kind of fall. I guess that would be kind of a light blue.
Yeah, some inks call themselves turquoise, but they're really kind of a light blue. And then some turquoises consider themselves a little bit more tealy. So it really depends. Turquoise is one of those inks that like no one can really agree on what the color is. Yeah. I'm sure there's some sort of official answer, but as far as inks go, they're pretty all over the place.
Yeah, true. Another fun little thing, I mean, kind of the principle what Drew was talking about there is that you tend to get the most shading when you have inks that are less saturated with dye, because then you think about it, okay, if you have a really, really deeply saturated dark ink, it can only be but so light, because even if you put a tiny little bit of ink down, there's so much dye in it already, you can only go from like dark to darker to some degree. But if you're starting with a really light colored ink, then when you really let it pool up, especially if you have, like Drew said, a really wet writing pen or a flex pen or something like that, or if you're writing and then you're crossing back over top, if you're writing in cursive especially, you're crossing back over top a line that you've already written, then the ink is basically like kind of doubling. And so you'll get, darker colors where the ink like crosses over the lines you've already written. It's going to look much more dramatic if you have a very light colored ink. So it is kind of interesting because there's some people that tend to want like really dark, deep, bold colors. But then when you're dealing with shading, you almost want the opposite of those properties. But kind of a neat little thing you can try in small quantities with whatever ink that you already have is you can try diluting it down a little bit. Just use some distilled water and, go down like 10% water, 25% water, maybe even 50%, and just see what happens and see if you like the shading effects that you get. Could impact the flow a little bit, and maybe it's not to your liking, but it's something that you can experiment with really pretty inexpensively just with inks you already have on hand. And you might be able to take an ink that you already like and turn it into an amazing shader. Obviously, keeping in mind if you are heavily diluting an ink, it's going to lighten up the color quite a bit. So it's not like you're going to just improve the shading, but, still keep the same bold color. So, you get to play around with it. It's one of the kind of more fun and interesting aspects of playing around with ink, is when you start diluting it, it can be a very cheap way and very fast way to really change the properties of the ink and give you some more diversity there. So we had done a video on this of the best shading inks, which is one of my more famous intros there, with my trench coat that was too short when I was wearing cargo shorts, I believe, and looks like I'm a flasher. But
it cannot be confirmed at this point whether or not Brian was wearing any pants. He says he was wearing cargo pants. We're just gonna you can choose to.
If I'm saying it, isn't that confirmed? Like,
I guess admitting to wearing cargo pants.
Yeah, Brian wears pants at all times when he's in the office. That I will assure you.
we might need to do a sequel to that video, Brian.
I don't know if we still had that coat, though. That'd be pretty funny if we did.
Oh, that's fine. No, I'm thinking more or less like, suspenders, white cuffed up t-shirt with your feet up on your desk with some gum stuck to the bottom of your shoe.
Okay, I gotcha.
Looking for some shady ink.
That same like film noir style that we were going for. Okay. We actually probably could refresh that.
And then I can walk in, lay on your desk. Won't be awkward at all.
Oh, gosh. Oh, that's weird. Oh, I don't want to think about that at all. Okay. No, I can think of you as more of like I'm failing to think of the words, but like
I'd be the bartender that doesn't serve alcohol. I've got the cuffed up sleeves. I'm just wiping out a glass, and you're like, "Give me some of the hard stuff." I'm like, "I have some Ovaltine, buddy."
Yeah, no, I was thinking your vibe is more of like the downtrodden, like kind of guy who's like got his hat in his hands and he's kind of like, all like clothes are all torn up, kind of. I don't know what I'm picturing exactly, but
I don't know either. But it's
you could
clear
pull up
that
you could pull up that bartender look. That would.
Well,
that would
yeah,
work for you.
Clearly, it's definitely the resident alcohol aficionado.
Yeah, somebody would be like, "Make me an old fashioned." You'd be like, "You're an old fashioned."
So milk then?
Yeah, right. Be like, so if you were to make an old fashioned, how would you do it exactly?
Yeah, so by that, I know, but I'm just wondering if you know.
I totally know. Just mine might be different than yours, and so I'd just like to know how you want it exactly. So just go ahead and tell me.
It's like chowder. Who knows what kind you want? Manhattan, New England? I don't know.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway. Yeah, your old video.
Yeah, my old video. So definitely had some that on there that I think all of them still hold up really well. I stand by all of them. That list is Noodler's Apache Sunset, Noodler's Black Swan and Australian Roses, Diamine Marine, one of my all-time faves, Noodler's Navajo Turquoise, which is like one of those classic blue turquoises.
That's probably like the best shader. Like it's so good.
It's so good. Noodler's Golden Brown. Diatramentus Mint Turquoise, which that one is much more of like a teal kind of a turquoise, which is why it's different and also on the list along with Navajo Turquoise. And then Noodler's Lexington Gray, which is a great gray shading color. And then I added some honorable mentions to the list. Robert Oster Blue Water Ice, which I love. That falls into that lighter blue kind of pretty much gonna shade well category, but it's a particularly strong shader. And then you already mentioned some Sailor Ink Studio. There are so many Ink Studio colors that are great shaders. I think it's worth an honorable mention pretty much for the whole category because they all tend to be in that group.
One of the great things about the Ink Studio line, also the Shikiori line, there are some Shikiori inks that shade pretty well too, but overall there are a lot of shaders, like Brian said, in the Sailor Ink Studio line, and some unconventional colors, like some mustardy browns that have really good shading, some colors that you don't think would be ones that are traditionally beautiful colors, like some earthy colors, but really when you get them on paper and they do get to perform, they can be really, really stunning. So I would encourage you to pick up a couple ink samples of some colors that you think you might be able to see some shading on and give them a shot. They might surprise you.
Very cool.